How do you deal with a friend who films instead of helps? I was spotting Devin Marsh on bench press when the bar slipped and crushed his throat. Not his fault, not mine either. Just a clip that failed on 275 pounds of iron. He made this wet, choking sound, and his face went purple in maybe 3 seconds. I grabbed the bar and lifted it off him, adrenaline making the weight feel like nothing. He rolled onto his side gasping, and blood came out of his mouth. Not a lot, but enough to know something was seriously wrong. I pulled out my phone to call 911, and that's when I noticed Devin's phone was already out. He wasn't calling anyone. He was filming himself on the gym floor, adjusting the angle to get his face and the blood in the same shot. "Holy shit, guys," he was saying to the camera, his voice raspy and damaged. "That almost killed me. Did you see that?" I stood there with my phone in my hand, watching him tilt the camera toward me. "My boy froze up," he said, still recording. Didn't even react. That wasn't true, and he knew it. I'd pulled the bar off him in under 2 seconds, but he kept filming, kept talking to his followers like they were in the room with us. The gym was empty at 5:47 in the morning, just us and the receptionist, who couldn't see the weight area from her desk. Nobody to contradict whatever story he wanted to tell. I called 911 myself while he filmed his throat swelling up. The paramedics arrived in 6 minutes and loaded Devin onto a gurney. His phone was still in his hand, camera still rolling as they put the oxygen mask over his face. One of the paramedics asked him to put it away, and he just shook his head, kept filming. In the ambulance, he posted the video before they even started the IV. I know because my phone started buzzing with notifications while I was giving the gym staff my information for their incident report. Devin had tagged me in the post with the caption, "When your spotter panics and almost lets you die." The video already had 12,000 views. By the time I got to the hospital, it was at 100,000. His followers were commenting about how calm he stayed during a life-threatening situation, how he kept creating content even while injured. Some were calling me incompetent, saying I should never spot anyone again. Others were making jokes about freezing under pressure. I watched the view count climb while sitting in the ER waiting room, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline. The receptionist called my name, and I went to the desk. "Are you family?" she asked. I explained I was his friend, the one who called 911. She told me he was getting a CT scan for his throat, and they'd update me when they knew more. I sat back down and opened Instagram again. 200,000 views now. Someone had already made a meme using a freeze frame of my face. A doctor came out after 40 minutes and asked if I was the one who lifted the bar off Devin's throat. I said yes, and she told me I probably saved his life by acting so quickly. The immediate removal prevented a crushed windpipe that would have required emergency surgery. He had severe bruising and swelling, but no permanent damage. She said he was lucky. I asked if I could see him, and she said he was resting, but I could go back in about an hour. I thanked her and went outside to my car. My phone had died from all the notifications, so I plugged it in and watched it light up with hundreds of new messages. Devin's video was at 500,000 views. He'd posted 2 more from his hospital bed, one showing the IV in his arm, and another with him making a pained expression while pointing at his bruised throat. The captions were all about surviving a near-death experience and never taking life for granted. No mention of me pulling the bar off him. No mention of calling 911 while he filmed. I screenshotted everything before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the phone steady. Something told me I'd need proof of what actually happened. My manager called at 7:30 asking why I wasn't at work yet. I explained about the accident, and he got quiet for a second before saying he'd seen the video. Everyone had seen the video. It was on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere Devin posted. My manager said to take the day and we'd talk tomorrow about the incident. The way he said incident made my stomach hurt. I drove home and found my roommate Julian watching the video on his laptop. "Dude," he said when I walked in, "this is insane. Are you okay?" I told him what actually happened, and he believed me immediately because he'd known Devin for years too. He'd watched Devin transform from a regular guy who worked at a marketing firm into someone who built his entire identity around his online following. 800,000 followers on Instagram, 1.2 million on TikTok, enough sponsorships to quit his job 6 months ago. Julian pulled up Devin's profile and showed me the engagement metrics. Every post got 50,000 likes minimum. The gym video was already his most viewed content ever. He's not going to take this down, Julian said. This is exactly the kind of thing that makes people go viral. I tried calling Devin that afternoon, but he didn't answer. I texted asking him to call me back and got left on read. At 4 a.m., he posted another hospital update with the caption, "Real ones know who really panicked today," with a thinking emoji. The comments were brutal. People were saying I should be banned from gyms, that I was a liability, that Devin needed better friends who wouldn't freeze in a crisis. A few people defended me, saying the video didn't show everything, and he should be grateful someone was there to help. But they got drowned out by thousands of others calling me incompetent or worse. I screenshotted the comments too, organizing them into a folder on my desktop. My hands moved automatically, documenting everything without really thinking about why. Just this instinct that said I needed to preserve evidence before things got worse. Julian ordered pizza, and we ate it while watching the view count climb past 2 million. "You should respond," he said. "Post your side." I thought about it, but something stopped me. Once I engaged publicly, there was no going back. The whole thing would become a he said content war, exactly what Devin wanted. My mom called that evening after seeing the video shared in her book club Facebook group. She asked if I was okay and whether Devin was lying about what happened. I told her the truth, and she got angry in that mom way, where her voice gets very quiet and sharp. "That boy is exploiting a medical emergency for attention," she said. "You need to protect yourself." She'd worked as a paralegal for 30 years before retiring and still thought like one. She told me to document everything, get witness statements from the gym, and consider talking to a lawyer about defamation. I promised her I would, but honestly, I felt too tired to fight. The whole day had drained something out of me. After we hung up, I looked up defamation lawyers anyway, just reading their websites and fee structures. Most wanted $5,000 retainers for cases like this. I had maybe $2,000 in savings. The folder on my desktop had 47 screenshots now. I added the gym's incident report that they'd emailed me, and the doctor's statement about how quick action saved Devin from serious injury. Paper trail starting to form, even though I didn't have a clear plan yet. Work the next morning felt like walking into an ambush. I'd been a project coordinator at North Point Construction for 3 years, good at my job, never had problems with anyone. But the second I walked into the office, conversations stopped. People looked at me and then looked away. My desk had a printed screenshot of Devin's video taped to the monitor with "Hero" written across my face in red marker. I pulled it down and shoved it in the trash. My coworker Angela came over and asked if I was okay. She'd seen the video, but wanted to hear my version. I told her what happened, and she nodded, said she figured there was more to the story. "Devin's always been dramatic," she said. "Remember when he made that whole video series about his breakup?" I did remember. 3 months of content about his ex-girlfriend, never using her name, but making it obvious enough that everyone figured out who she was. She'd ended up deleting all her social media because his followers kept harassing her. Angela squeezed my shoulder and went back to her desk. At 10 now, my manager called me into his office. His name was Gordon Fletcher, and he'd always been fair to me, even recommended me for a promotion last year that I didn't get. He closed the door and gestured for me to sit. "I need to ask you about the gym incident," he said. I went through everything again, step by step. He listened without interrupting, and then pulled up Devin's video on his computer. "The problem," he said, "is that this makes the company look bad. You're tagged by name, your LinkedIn says you work here, and now we're getting comments on our social media about hiring people who can't handle emergencies." I felt my chest get tight. "I did handle it. I saved his life." Gordon nodded. "I believe you, but perception matters, especially for a company our size. We're bidding on a major contract right now, and the client has seen this video. They're concerned about our judgment and reliability." He let that sink in before continuing. "I'm going to have to put you on administrative leave while we figure this out. It's paid, but you can't come to the office or contact clients until we resolve this." The tightness in my chest turned to pressure, like someone pressing down on my sternum. "For how long?" Gordon looked uncomfortable. "At least 2 weeks, maybe longer depending on how this plays out." I cleaned out my desk in front of everyone, putting my notebooks and pens in a cardboard box while trying to keep my hands steady. Angela hugged me on the way out and whispered that this was bullshit. I thanked her and left through the back exit to avoid anyone else. In my car, I sat with the box on the passenger seat and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not anger yet, just this expanding awareness that my life was being damaged by someone I'd considered a friend, someone I'd helped build furniture for, loaned money to, invited to family dinners, someone who was now letting millions of strangers believe I'd frozen during a crisis instead of immediately acting to save him. I drove to my mom's house because I didn't want to be alone in my apartment. She made coffee and we sat at her kitchen table while I explained about being put on leave. She got that quiet, angry voice again. "Call a lawyer," she said. "Today. Not next week, today." She pulled up 3 names from her old contacts, attorneys who specialized in defamation and privacy law. I promised to call them and she made me do it right there while she watched. The first 2 went to voicemail. The third answered. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she sounded young but confident on the phone. I explained the situation in maybe 3 minutes, trying to keep emotion out of my voice. She asked a few questions about my relationship with Devin, whether I'd signed any releases, if he'd profited from the video yet. I told her about the sponsorships he had, how this video was probably worth thousands in new followers and engagement. She went quiet for a second and then said, "This is complicated but possibly actionable. Can you come in tomorrow at noon?" I said yes, and she gave me her address. The consultation fee was $300, which I could barely afford, but my mom insisted on paying it. "This is an investment in protecting yourself," she said. After I hung up, she made me write down every single thing I remembered from that morning. The time we arrived at the gym, which exercises we did, exact sequence of events, the doctor's words, everything. Writing it down made it feel more real and more surreal at the same time, like I was documenting something that happened to someone else. But the folder on my desktop kept growing, and that felt like doing something productive instead of just sitting in the damage. Devin posted again that night from home, sitting on his couch with his throat still visibly bruised. The video was him talking about how trauma reveals people's true character and how grateful he was to have survived. In the background, I could see the Michigan State hoodie I'd bought him for his birthday last year hanging on a chair. The comments were calling him brave and inspiring. Someone suggested he start a podcast about surviving near-death experiences. His follower count had jumped to 950,000 on Instagram. The video had 7 million views across all platforms. I screenshotted the Michigan State hoodie, adding it to my folder with a note about buying it for him. Small detail, but it mattered somehow. Proof of a friendship that had existed before this. Julian came home from work and found me at my laptop still taking screenshots. "You're obsessing," he said, not unkindly. I told him about Patricia Vance and the consultation tomorrow. He thought for a second and then said, "Good. Devin needs consequences. He's been getting away with this shit for too long." I asked what he meant, and he pulled up his own phone, scrolling back through Devin's content history. "Look at this pattern. Every few months, some crisis or drama that gets him attention. The breakup, that food poisoning thing, the car accident that wasn't even his fault. He's built his entire brand on being a sympathetic victim." I spent 2 hours that night going through Devin's entire social media history. Julian was right. Every spike in followers corresponded with some traumatic event that Devin documented in real time. The breakup had gotten him 200,000 new followers. The food poisoning at a restaurant led to a settlement and a viral video about food safety that hit 3 million views. The car accident had sponsors sending him care packages while he recovered. Each crisis was meticulously filmed and posted, sometimes within minutes of happening. The pattern was so obvious once you looked for it, but I'd never connected the dots before. He wasn't just sharing his life, he was curating trauma for content. And I was the latest episode. I created a timeline document, mapping each crisis to follower growth and engagement metrics. By midnight, I had a 15-page document that looked like something a prosecutor would build. Julian read over my shoulder and whistled. "Send this to your lawyer," he said. "This shows intent and pattern." I attached it to an email to Patricia Vance with a note saying I'd found relevant information about his content history. Then I finally went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment when I looked over and realized he was filming instead of helping himself. Patricia Vance's office was in a converted house downtown, the kind of place that probably used to be someone's family home. She met me at the door, younger than I expected, maybe 32, with red hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her handshake was firm, and she led me to an office filled with file boxes and framed degrees from Georgetown Law. "I reviewed your email," she said, pulling up my timeline document on her computer. "This is excellent work. Shows pattern and practice of exploitation for content." She spent 20 minutes asking questions about my relationship with Devin, whether we had written agreements about filming each other, if I'd ever appeared in his content before. I told her about a few videos where I was in the background, nothing major. She made notes and then pulled up the gym video, watching it twice while I sat there reliving the worst morning of my life. "Here's what I see," she said finally. "Defamation is hard to prove because he didn't explicitly lie. He implied you froze, which is false, but his exact words are vague enough to defend. However, the privacy claim is stronger. He filmed you in a moment of crisis without consent and profited from it. That's a violation of personality rights in this state." Patricia explained that I could file a cease and desist, demanding he take down the video and stop profiting from content featuring me without permission. If he refused, we could pursue a lawsuit for invasion of privacy and unjust enrichment. The process would take months and cost money I didn't have, but she offered to work on contingency, taking a percentage of any settlement instead of upfront fees. "I believe in this case," she said. "What he did is exploitative, and the pattern you documented shows it's not a one-time thing. Other victims might come forward once they see someone standing up to him." I asked about the defamation angle, and she shook her head. "Focus on privacy and exploitation. That's where we have the strongest case. The damage to your reputation is real, but proving he intentionally defamed you is harder than proving he violated your rights by filming and profiting without consent." We spent another hour going over strategy, and I signed a representation agreement. Walking out of her office, I felt something shift. Not hope exactly, but purpose. Like I had tools to fight back instead of just absorbing damage. Patricia would draft the cease and desist by Monday, and we'd serve Devin by end of week. My administrative leave dragged on with nothing to do except watch Devin's content grow. He posted gym videos from a different location, showing his recovery workouts with captions about overcoming adversity. The original video stayed up despite everything. He'd added a pinned comment saying, "Some people deal with trauma differently, just grateful to be alive," which his followers took as noble and mature. My phone kept buzzing with DMs from strangers, some supportive, but most accusing me of trying to ruin Devin's reputation after failing him in a crisis. I stopped reading them after the first 50. Julian took me to a brewery on Saturday afternoon to get me out of the apartment. We were halfway through our second round when I saw someone recording us from across the bar. They weren't even subtle about it. Phone pointed directly at our table. Julian noticed too and stood up. "Can we help you?" he called out. The guy lowered his phone and yelled, "You're the one who almost killed Devin Marsh." Other people in the bar turned to look. The bartender came over and asked what was going on. Julian explained, and the bartender told the guy to leave, or he'd call the cops. The guy left, but not before posting a story about seeing that guy from Devin's video at a bar looking unbothered. We left the brewery, and I felt this creeping awareness that my face was now recognizable to thousands of people who thought they knew what kind of person I was. Julian drove us back to the apartment, and we spent the rest of the day inside. On Sunday, Patricia called to say the cease and desist was ready to be served. A process server would deliver it to Devin's apartment Monday morning. She warned me that he'd probably post about it, try to spin the legal action as harassment or censorship. "Don't respond," she said. "Let him talk. Everything he posts can be used to show his pattern of exploitation." I thanked her and spent Sunday organizing my evidence folder. 200 screenshots now, including the brewery incident that someone had tagged Devin in. He'd shared it to his story with the caption, "Crazy running into people in public," and a shrugging emoji. 8 million people saw that story before it disappeared. I screenshotted it first, though. Everything went in the folder. Every single piece of evidence of what this was doing to my life while he profited. Monday morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls from a blocked number and a text from Devin finally. "We need to talk. Call me." I didn't call him. I called Patricia instead and told her about the messages. She said not to respond and wait for confirmation that he'd been served the cease and desist. The process server confirmed delivery at 10:23 Monday morning. By 10:45, Devin had posted a video crying about being sued by his best friend after almost dying. The video was carefully shot, good lighting, positioned camera, tissues nearby. He said I was trying to silence him for telling his truth about what happened, that he'd always supported me and couldn't believe I'd attack him during his recovery. The video got 2 million views in the first hour. His followers flooded my social media with death threats and harassment. Someone found my mom's Facebook and sent her messages calling me a monster. I had to make all my accounts private and change my phone number. Patricia called that afternoon sounding angry. He's in breach already. The cease and desist specifically said not to discuss the case publicly, and he immediately violated it. This helps us. She filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to stop him from posting about me while the case proceeded. The judge granted it 2 days later, but enforcement was another matter. Devin just started making videos about someone trying to censor him, never saying my name, but making it obvious through context. His followers figured it out anyway, and the harassment continued. I filed a police report about the death threats, and they took my information, but said there wasn't much they could do about anonymous online accounts. Gordon called on Thursday to say they were extending my administrative leave another 2 weeks. The client had pulled out of the contract citing reputation concerns, and the company was doing damage control. He sounded apologetic, but firm. I asked if I still had a job, and he said they were evaluating options. That was corporate speak for looking for ways to fire me without legal blowback. I hung up and looked at my bank account. $400 left after paying rent. Administrative leave was supposed to be paid, but my last check had been short with no explanation. I called HR and got voicemail, left a message asking about the payment discrepancy. Nobody called back. Angela texted me that afternoon saying people in the office were taking sides. Some thought I was being treated unfairly. Others thought the company had to protect its image. The division was creating tension, and management was considering firing me to make it go away. I thanked her for the warning and added her text to my evidence folder. 300 screenshots now. The documentation had become automatic, muscle memory. Every email, every text, every post, all of it saved and organized. Patricia had started calling it the Bible because it was so comprehensive. The preliminary hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for 3 weeks out, but Patricia filed a motion to expedite based on ongoing harassment. The judge agreed to hear it within 10 days. In the meantime, Devin posted daily content about censorship and cancel culture, positioning himself as a victim of someone trying to control his narrative. His followers ate it up. Justice for Devin started trending on Twitter. Someone created a GoFundMe for his legal defense and raised $40,000 in 72 hours. Meanwhile, I couldn't afford groceries. Julian covered rent that month, and my mom kept bringing over food. The shame of being 29 and dependent on family help felt like another layer of damage. But Patricia said it would get better once we got in front of a judge. Courts don't like exploitation, she said, especially when there's this much evidence. The evidence folder was at 400 files now, cross-referenced and tagged by category. Defamation, privacy violation, harassment, breach of restraining order, pattern of behavior. Julian had helped me create a database tracking every violation. We'd become amateur paralegals out of necessity. My mom called on Saturday morning saying she'd found Devin's ex-girlfriend's contact information through Facebook, the one from the breakup videos. Her name was Simone Laurent, and she'd moved to Oregon to escape the attention. My mom thought she might be willing to talk about her experience. I asked Patricia first if it was appropriate, and she said yes. Corroborating witnesses to the pattern would strengthen our case. I sent Simone a carefully worded message explaining who I was and what was happening. She responded within an hour. "I've been waiting for someone to finally hold him accountable," she wrote. "He destroyed my life for 3 months of content. I'll help however I can." We set up a call for Sunday afternoon. Simone's story was worse than I'd imagined. Devin had filmed their entire breakup, including private conversations, posting edited versions that made her look unstable and manipulative. He'd never used her name, but posted enough details that everyone figured it out. His followers had doxed her address, gotten her fired from her job at a nonprofit by flooding her employer with calls, and sent thousands of messages calling her every name imaginable. She'd filed a restraining order, but by the time it was processed, The damage was done. He thrives on turning his life into content, she said. Other people are just characters in his narrative, not real humans with consequences. I had to move across the country to escape it. Patricia wanted Simone to provide a written statement and potentially testify about the pattern. Simone agreed immediately. If this stops him from doing it to someone else, I'll do whatever helps, she said. We spent 2 hours on the phone going through her documentation. She had everything: screenshots, emails, legal records, therapy bills from dealing with the trauma. Her folder was even more comprehensive than mine. Patricia added it all to our case file. With 2 documented victims showing the same pattern, our case got significantly stronger. This is no longer just about you, Patricia said. This is about someone who systematically exploits people for profit and needs to be stopped. The hearing was 6 days away. Devin posted a video that night about fake friends who turn on you when you're vulnerable. In the background, I could see he'd thrown away the Michigan State hoodie. Small detail, but it felt intentional, erasing evidence of our friendship for the camera. I screenshotted it anyway and added it to the folder with a note about its absence. Everything mattered now. Every detail was ammunition. Monday morning brought an email from Gordon saying they were terminating my employment effective immediately. The stated reason was extended absence affecting team performance. But everyone knew the real reason. They were cutting ties to protect the company reputation. Angela called crying, saying she'd fought for me in the meeting but got outvoted. I thanked her and hung up, feeling numb more than angry. I'd expected it, but the reality still hurt. Patricia said we could potentially add wrongful termination to the case, but advised focusing on Devin first. One battle at a time, she said. Win this, and the other pieces might fall into place. The hearing was in 3 days. Patricia spent Monday and Wednesday preparing me to testify, running through likely questions and how to stay calm under pressure. He'll probably represent himself or have some cheap lawyer who'll try to discredit you, she said. Stay factual. Don't get emotional. Let the evidence speak. Simone flew in Wednesday night, and we met Thursday morning at Patricia's office to coordinate. Seeing her in person made the whole thing more real. She was 27, tiny, looked exhausted despite being well-dressed. I'm terrified of seeing him, she admitted. Patricia assured her she'd be safe in the courtroom and that her testimony was crucial. The hearing started at 9 Daokao Thursday morning, in a small courtroom that smelled like old wood and stale coffee. Devin showed up with an attorney, a guy in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be there. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Harriet Chen, who had a reputation for being no-nonsense. She read the motion and looked up at both sides. "This is about a video posted without consent?" she asked. Patricia stood and outlined the case clearly. Privacy violation, exploitation for profit, ongoing harassment despite restraining order. Devin's attorney argued First Amendment rights and public interest in Devin's survival story. The judge looked unimpressed. "Did you ask permission to film your friend during a medical emergency?" she asked Devin directly. He stammered something about being in shock. "So shocked you had the presence of mind to position your camera and edit the footage before posting?" She was already skeptical, and we hadn't even presented evidence yet. Patricia walked through the timeline. The accident, my immediate response. Devin filming instead of seeking help. The videos spread, my job loss, the harassment. She presented the doctor's statement confirming I'd saved Devin's life through quick action. Then she called me to testify. I walked through everything step by step, keeping my voice steady and factual like Patricia had coached. Devin's attorney tried to rattle me during cross-examination, suggesting I was just embarrassed about freezing and now trying to control the narrative. I stayed calm and pointed out that the doctor's statement contradicted that claim. The judge interrupted. "Counselor, do you have evidence that your client's life was endangered by the plaintiff's actions or inaction?" Devin's attorney admitted he didn't. "Then let's move on," the judge said. Patricia called Simone next, and her testimony was devastating. She described the breakup videos, the doxing, losing her job, having to move. Devin's attorney objected repeatedly, but the judge allowed it as evidence of pattern. "I'm trying to understand if your client has a history of exploiting personal relationships for online content," the judge said. Devin's attorney had no good answer. By lunchtime, things were going well. The judge seemed to understand what Devin had done and why it mattered. We reconvened at 2 Awa, and Patricia presented the evidence folder, all 400 files organized by category. The judge spent 20 minutes reviewing it, while the courtroom sat in silence. Finally, she looked at Devin. "Mr. Marsh, I'm seeing a disturbing pattern here. You seem to treat other people's trauma as content opportunities without regard for their consent or well-being. Is that a fair characterization?" Devin tried to explain that he was just sharing his authentic life experience, but the judge cut him off. "Your authentic life includes other people who have rights, including the right not to be exploited for your financial gain. I'm granting the restraining order and ordering immediate removal of all content featuring the plaintiff without consent. Additionally, I'm ordering you to cease all indirect references to this case or the plaintiff on your platforms." Devin's attorney objected that this violated free speech. The judge was unmoved. "Your client can speak all he wants about his own experiences. He cannot profit from exploiting others without their permission. The video comes down today. If it's not removed by 5 p.m., I'll hold him in contempt." She set a follow-up hearing for 30 days out to ensure compliance. We won. Patricia hugged me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Simone was crying with relief. Devin walked past without looking at any of us, his attorney talking urgently on his phone. By 4 hours, the video was gone from all his platforms. 7 million views erased like they'd never existed. His followers were furious, flooding his comments with questions. He posted a vague statement about respecting court orders but fighting for truth. The comments were mixed now, though. Some people were starting to question his version of events. The satisfaction lasted until Monday, when I checked my bank account and saw $97. Winning the case was important, but it didn't pay my bills or get my job back. I filed for unemployment and started applying to new positions, but every Google search of my name brought up cached versions of Devin's video and articles about the controversy. Patricia said we could pursue damages in civil court, but that would take months and more money. She agreed to continue on contingency, but warned me the process would be long. In the meantime, I needed income. Julian's friend worked at a warehouse and said they were hiring. I applied and got hired for overnight shifts loading trucks. It paid $16 an hour, half what I'd made at North Point. My first night, I pulled a muscle in my back lifting a box wrong. Came home at 6 a.m. and collapsed on the couch, too tired to shower. This was my life now, working overnight physical labor because my professional reputation was destroyed. Julian tried to be encouraging, but we both knew this wasn't sustainable long-term. I had a business degree and 3 years of project management experience. I should be in an office, not loading trucks. But every application I submitted came back, rejected, or went unanswered. Devin's video might be gone, but the damage lingered. Simone called 2 weeks later with unexpected news. A journalist from a digital media outlet called BuzzStream had reached out wanting to do a story about influencer exploitation. They'd found her testimony from our hearing through public records and wanted to interview both of us. She thought it might help rehabilitate our reputations if handled right. I asked Patricia's advice, and she loved the idea. "Public opinion matters," she said. "If you control your narrative, you take power away from Devin's version." The journalist's name was Keisha Williams, and she spent 3 hours interviewing me over Zoom. She was thorough, fact-checking everything, asking hard questions about my relationship with Devin and whether I'd consented to be filmed before. I told her the truth. He'd filmed group hangouts before, but nothing like this, never in a crisis moment without asking. She interviewed Simone separately and spoke to Patricia about the legal case. The article came out 10 days later with the headline, "The Dark Side of Trauma Content: How Influencers Exploit Real Crisis for Clicks." It was devastating to Devin. Keisha had documented the pattern across multiple people, interviewed experts about exploitation, and included the judge's ruling. She'd also found 2 other people Devin had featured in crisis content without proper consent. The article went viral immediately, getting shared by major accounts and media outlets. Devin's response was predictable. He posted a long statement about being misunderstood and having his life taken out of context. But his comments section had turned. People were questioning his motives, pointing out the patterns Keisha had documented, sharing their own stories of influencers who'd exploited them. His follower count started dropping for the first time since I'd known him. By the end of the week, he'd lost 200,000 followers. Sponsors started pulling deals. A fitness app canceled his partnership. A supplement company removed his affiliate link. The financial consequences were adding up. Patricia filed the civil lawsuit seeking damages for lost wages, emotional distress, and unjust enrichment from content he'd profited from without consent. She estimated we could potentially recover $150,000 if we won, though she warned that collecting would be challenging if he didn't have liquid assets. The lawsuit was public record, and Keisha wrote a follow-up article about it. More people came forward with stories about Devin. A pattern emerged of him gravitating toward people in vulnerable moments, filming their reactions, posting without permission. His ex-roommate described how Devin had filmed a mental health crisis and posted it as real talk about anxiety. A cousin talked about a family funeral where Devin live-streamed his grief for followers. The civil case moved slowly through the system while I kept working overnight shifts and living on ramen. My back pain got worse, and I had to see a doctor who prescribed physical therapy I couldn't afford. Julian helped with rent again, and my mom paid for groceries. The shame of being broke at 29 felt crushing some days, but Patricia kept telling me to be patient. Justice isn't fast, she said, but it's coming. 4 months after the initial hearing, we got a settlement offer. Devin's attorney proposed $75,000 to make everything go away. Patricia wanted to refuse and push for trial, but I was exhausted and broke. I accepted the settlement. The money arrived in my account 6 weeks later. After Patricia's contingency fee and paying back Julian and my mom, I had $44,000 left, enough to survive for a while and start rebuilding. I quit the warehouse job and spent 2 weeks doing nothing but sleeping and recovering. Then I started applying for professional positions again, this time leading with the BuzzStream article that told my side. 3 months later, I got hired at a sustainable energy company as a project coordinator. The pay was better than North Point, and the culture felt healthier. My manager had read about the case and respected how I'd handled it. "Takes integrity to stand up to someone with a platform like that," she said during my interview. 1 year after the gym accident, I was sitting in my new apartment flipping through job applications when Simone called. She'd been following Devin's accounts and noticed something interesting. His follower count had dropped to 400,000, less than half his peak. His engagement was terrible, posts getting 5,000 likes instead of 50,000. Sponsors had mostly abandoned him. He'd had to get a regular job at a digital marketing agency, the same field he'd quit to be a full-time influencer. She thought I should know that the consequences were real and lasting. I thanked her, and we talked for a while about how we were both doing. She'd gotten engaged to someone who respected her boundaries and never posted about her online. I was dating someone from work who didn't even have Instagram. We'd both built new lives away from people who treated real humans like content. After we hung up, I opened Devin's Instagram one last time. His latest post was a gym photo with the caption, "Back to basics." Only 3,000 likes after being up for 2 days. The comments were mostly spam bots. I closed the app and deleted it from my phone. I didn't need to track his decline anymore. The evidence folder stayed backed up on my external drive, 600 files documenting everything that happened. Sometimes I thought about deleting it, but Patricia advised keeping it forever in case he tried anything again. So it lived on my shelf next to old photo albums, a reminder of what happens when you let someone exploit your crisis for clicks. My apartment felt different now, filled with furniture I'd picked out myself and plants that were actually alive. Work was good, challenging projects with people who respected boundaries. Julian and I had moved into separate places but stayed close friends. My mom called weekly just to check in, not to worry about me surviving. Therapy helped process the betrayal and rebuild trust in friendships. The warehouse job back pain finally healed with proper treatment. Small pieces of normalcy stacking up over months until life felt solid again. I ran into Angela at a coffee shop one afternoon, and we caught up for an hour. She'd left North Point for a better position at a nonprofit. We talked about how the whole thing had changed us, made us more careful about who we let close and what we shared online. "You handled it perfectly, though," she said. "You documented everything, stayed calm, let the system work. Most people would have just reacted emotionally." I told her about Simone and the journalist and how many people had reached out afterward with similar stories. "Maybe something good came from it," I said. Angela nodded. "You stopped him from doing it to someone else. That matters." We exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch this time. Walking back to my car, I thought about how much had changed in a year. Lost a job, lost a friend, lost my savings, but gained clarity about what real friendship looks like, and learned that justice might be slow, but it's possible if you're willing to document and fight. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.